we're going to be doing lesson 15.6, which starts on page 889. And in this lesson, you are going to be partitioning shapes. Guess what? You actually did that in the last lesson. Partitioning just means breaking up shapes into equal pieces. So in this, what your goal is to do is to divide circles and rectangles into halves, thirds, and fourths. These are fraction words, so let's take a look at what that means. So I like to think about pies or pizza or chocolate bars when I am dividing things into halves, thirds, and fourths. So if I'm dividing something into half, let's say I have an apple and I want to share my apple with my friend. If I cut it in half, I'm cutting it into 2 equal pieces. And that's super important that we realize that these pieces are equal. I'm actually even going to fix this so that it looks like my pieces are exactly the same size. If I were to divide a shape into pieces that were not equal, first of all, that wouldn't be fair. If I like apples and my friend likes apples, it wouldn't be fair for me to get this small part and them to get this big part. But that's also not partitioning shapes into equal pieces. So in this lesson, we want to make sure we're making our pieces equal. If I have a chocolate bar, there's actually 2 ways that I can divide my chocolate bar. I can go up and down, just like I did with my circle, or I can go sideways. And actually with my circle, there are more ways that I can do that too, as long as both of my pieces are equal. There are probably more than one way that you can divide all of these shapes, and we'll take a look at that in just a minute. So when I have a half, I say I have 1/2. Another way I can write 1/2 is 1 out of 2. Each piece is 1/2 of the whole. And in order to have a whole, either a whole apple here or a whole chocolate bar here, once I have divided it, I'm going to need both halves. So the whole equals 2 out of 2. If I have both parts, then I get the whole thing. And if I have only one part, then I have only one of the halves. So thirds are just like what it sounds like. Instead of dividing it into 2 pieces, you're going to divide it into 3 pieces. So for a circle, what you're going to do is make a kind of peace sign, either upside down or right side up. And I want to do as equal of pieces as I can. I know these aren't exactly the same, but I do want to make them as close to exactly the same as I can. So each one of these pieces, I'm pretending, is a blueberry pie. And I'm splitting this blueberry pie between myself and 2 friends, so that's 3 of us. And we each get 1/3 of the pie. When I'm doing my chocolate bar, again, I want to try to divide it into 3 equal pieces. And each piece, I don't know if I'll be able to fit this in, is 1/3. This one would also be 1/3. This one would also be 1/3. In order for me to have a whole, either chocolate bar or pie, I'm going to need 3 out of 3 pieces in order to have the whole thing. And that means I'm getting the whole thing to myself. So here is my favorite type of pie, a key lime pie. And if I'm dividing it into fourths, you may have guessed that I'm dividing it into 4 equal pieces. And each piece, usually I'll divide it in half first, and then I'll divide those halves in half. And each piece is 1/4. For my chocolate bar, I can divide it just like I did up here, or I can divide it like I did here. Again, I like to divide it in half first. And if and actually I can do just like I did with my circle, but I'm going to divide this side in half and divide this side in half. And if I do that, it's pretty equal. And each one of these is 1/4 of the chocolate bar. And of course, for a whole, I'm going to need all 4 pieces. So I'm going to need 4 out of 4. I think I forgot out of on these. Out of 4 for my whole chocolate bar. So there's lots of different ways that you can divide things into halves. Thirds are kind of fussy. There's pretty much only 1 or 2 ways, I guess, with the rectangle. You could always have done it like this with the circle. Like I said before, you can make a peace sign. I call it a peace sign like that. And that goes with our thirds. When you are dividing things by halves, as long as the pieces are equal, you can put your line going lots of different directions. But I do need to make sure my pieces are equal. With fourths, same thing. There's more than one way that I can divide things as long as my pieces look equal. So you are going to be looking at dividing these shapes into equal pieces. This says use one type of pattern block, and that's going to be tough for you because you don't have pattern blocks. So let's say that you should divide this rectangle into 4 equal shares somehow. How can you divide this rectangle into 4 equal shares? And then what do you notice about the equal shares? Hopefully you notice that they all look the same. They look the same size. So you've got some tips on this page on how to divide it into equal shares. We can see one way that you can make equal shares and one way that these shares are not equal. Up here, we have 3 equal shares or thirds, and we can see a way that they are not equal. Again, we have fourths, and goodness gracious, I wonder who cut this pie. We can see some ways that they are not equal, and you can see lots of different ways. I know that there's at least one activity on this lesson that's going to have you divide into different ways. So when you're looking here, you're going to say, is it a half, a third, or a fourth? You're just going to see how many pieces there are, and that's going to help you decide. So this is divided into half, show 4 different ways. This has pretty much been done for you, so you can just use your pencil to do that. Yay! So this one, you get to show 2 different ways to divide it into 3 equal shares, 2 different ways to divide it into 4 equal shares, and 2 different ways to divide it into 2 equal shares. And then you will draw the pattern that comes next in the pattern below. On the back, again, you are cutting these waffles into halves and showing different ways that you can do that. You are sharing a watermelon, cutting it for 4 friends. And this is a garden. So when I have a garden, my gardens are usually a rectangle shape. I guess you could make a circular garden if you want. And if she wants beans, tomatoes, and peppers, that's going to be 3 different sections she's going to need in her garden. Feel free to, it does say draw a picture, so you can just draw the shapes, or you can make it fancy if you would like. So I hope that you are ready to partition some shapes and start making some fractions. You are going to be doing a lot of fractions in 3rd grade, so this is a great way to get ready for that. Have a great day.